live view. You're looking at a live view of the Falcon 9 rocket and Dragon spacecraft set to launch FRAM2, the first human spaceflight mission to orbit the poles. The four-person FRAM2 crew is getting ready to head to space in about 1 hour from now at Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Good evening. I'm John Isbrucker, Principal Falcon Integration Engineer here at SpaceX.
And I'm Jesse Anderson, a Senior Production Engineering Manager. Welcome to SpaceX's live coverage of the FRAM2 mission from outside Mission Control in Hawthorne, California. And it's always an honor to be sitting next to you, John, for one of these webcasts.
Thank you, Jesse. I'm happy to be here as well. Now, tonight's flight is named after the famous polar exploration ship FRAM. FRAM completed voyages to the Arctic and Antarctica at the turn of the 20th century, exploring both of Earth's poles nearly 100 years ago.
In honor of that mission, the crew will be bringing a small piece of the original FRAM ship with them to space. It's fitting that this mission is connected to those early explorers because that is, of course, what SpaceX is all about, exploration.
And that's exactly what the FRAM2 crew will be doing as they pursue their mission goals. They will be the first crew to view and capture the Earth's polar regions from low Earth orbit. Interestingly, the North and South poles are not visible to astronauts on the International Space Station or to most modern human spaceflight missions. So this crew will be getting a truly unique view in space.
Very unique. To achieve this, FRAM2 will launch into its 90-degree circular orbit to the south from Florida, flying over Miami as well as Cuba and Panama, and just west of Ecuador and Peru. And that means that the teams are taking into account high altitude wind speed and direction in the unlikely event Dragon would need to perform a launch escape with its Super Draco engines.
SpaceX, you are go for
the launch team has implemented new wind rules to ensure Dragon remains offshore in any launch escape scenario, including flight further downrange.
5 preparation of area farming of 4.100 launch preparation.
We're hearing a little bit of discussion to the crew right now, as we're inside the 1 hour mark, just giving them some heads up on upcoming events. Now, if we did have an escape needed in flight, Dragon would fire its Super Draco engines to either overshoot land or to slow down. And these are known as prograde and retrograde burns, and they would ensure a water landing.
And further downrange, Dragon could also turn sideways to perform an out-of-plane Super Draco burn that would push Dragon west into the Pacific Ocean. And separately, the southerly trajectory is also driving a partial boost back of the first stage booster, which we'll talk a little bit more later in the webcast.
Now, inclination is defined as the angle of the orbit relative to the equator. A 0-degree inclination is right over the equator, whereas 90 degrees is right over the poles. Now, the closest any astronauts have come to this was during the Soviet Vostok and Voskhod missions in the early 1960s, and that has included Yuri Gagarin's flight. Now, those missions flew to about 65 degrees inclination. NASA's Space Shuttle flew one mission to 62-degree inclination in the 1990s.
FRAM2 is go for launch.
SpaceX copies FRAM2, go for launch.
FRAM2 crew giving a go for launch as we slowly get closer to T0 in 55 minutes. So one thing about that trajectory over the poles, the crew is going to truly go where no one has gone before.
Quite literally. During the course of this mission, the crew will observe Earth's polar regions at an altitude of approximately 440 kilometers. Now, at this altitude, Dragon will fly from the North Pole to the South Pole in just 46 minutes and 40 seconds.
Now, this unique mission is being undertaken by an incredible crew. The mission is being commanded by Chun Wang, an entrepreneur and adventurer. Chun's goals for this mission is to highlight the crew's explorational spirit, inspire the public, and advance research in space. And there he is at 90 degrees north, where soon he'll be flying over.
And joining him on the mission is a crew of international adventurers, and that includes Norway's Jannicke Mikkelsen, which is FRAM2's vehicle commander, Australia's Eric Phillips, serving as mission specialist and medical officer, and Germany's Rabia Roga, who is FRAM2's mission pilot.
What a great crew. We're now at T-minus 54 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. Let's take a look at the crew's day so far and check in on where they are now.
Now, at this moment, the crew is currently seated inside of Dragon, completing their final checklist before liftoff. But the crew started their day by waking up and doing their first medical checks of the day. They were then transported to their first meal of the day, arriving at Hangar X at about T-minus 5 hours and 22 minutes. Then at about T-minus 5 hours and 17 minutes, they had a chance to see their families, have their first meal of the day, and then say their goodbyes.
After that, just under 4.5 hours before launch, they began the drive to the suit-up facility. That takes about 20 minutes. At T-minus 3 hours and 50 minutes, they received their final pre-launch briefing from Mission Control, as well as the very important weather briefing. And then finally, just inside of T-minus 3.5 hours, the SpaceX closeout team began helping the crew suit up in the suit-up room at Launch Complex 39A.
And at T-minus 3 hours and 5 minutes, the 4 crewmates walked out of the suit-up room, which you can see there on your screen. And they waved some goodbyes before they got into their Teslas and headed onto the launch pad. And there you can see them jamming out to some music there. It was a very short trip, just about 5 minutes from the suit-up facility to the launch pad. And at T-minus 2 hours and 55 minutes, they arrived at the pad and ascended the tower and made their way to the crew access arm, where they signed the wall in the white room, which you can see there on your screen.
We see the first 2 members signing, and then the other 2 members of the crew come down the access arm. And at T-minus 2 hours 45 minutes, the crew began to ingress Dragon and take their seats. It started with the mission commander, Chun Wang, and the mission pilot, Rebea Roga. They were followed by vehicle commander, Jannica Mikkelsen, and Eric Phillips, the mission specialist and medical officer. After all 4 crew members were seated, we did the comms and suit leak checks, and then we did the seat rotation into the launch configuration. That finished at T-minus 2 hours 29 minutes. About 10 minutes later, the SpaceX closeout team closed Dragon's hatch and performed the final leak checks. Next major event coming up will be T-minus 42 minutes. The crew arm will retract away from the vehicle in preparation for propellant loading, and then onward to the launch.
And coming up right before that happens, in just about 6.5 minutes from now, the launch director will conduct a go pull for propellant loading at T-minus 45 minutes. And after that, at T-minus 10 minutes, we will proceed into terminal count.
And all that brings us to launch, which is expected tonight at 9:46:50 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. That's just over 51 minutes from now. So while we're waiting, let's learn more about the crew that will be making history over the next 3 to 5 days in orbit.
FRAM2 is a crew representing multiple countries, each bringing a unique expertise and perspective to the mission. This will be the first spaceflight for everyone on board, all of whom have significant experience exploring and capturing the polar regions.
Mission Commander Chun Wang is an entrepreneur and adventurer. He's well-traveled, having visited more than 100 countries in the past few years alone. In fact, he met and selected his fellow FRAM2 crew members while living in Svalbard, the far north Norwegian archipelago.
Vehicle Commander Jannica Mikkelsen is a Norwegian director and cinematographer specializing in immersive technologies like virtual reality and 3D, and the first Norwegian astronaut, female Norwegian astronaut.
Australian Eric Phillips is FRAM2's mission specialist and medical officer. He is a professional polar adventurer and guide, having spent most of his adult life in the polar regions.
Germany's Rebea Roga is FRAM2's mission pilot and will oversee research activities on board. Rebea is an electrical engineer and robotics researcher from Berlin, who on this flight will become Germany's first female astronaut.
Now, in less than 4 minutes, we should hear from the SpaceX launch director giving directions to the team as we get ready for propellant load. So let's take a moment, though, to hear directly from the FRAM2 crew.
I am that person that you meet in a really remote area carrying a film camera and a really heavy backpack full of camera equipment. That is me.
Right now, I'm pursuing a PhD in Arctic robotics. So I give brains to autonomous boats in the Arctic, which basically means my background is research.
I work as a polar adventurer and guide. That essentially means that I'm taking myself and small teams, often customers, on expeditions typically to the North and South Poles.
I have dreaming about space stuff for quite some time, and even as young as in my teenagers, I spent so much time follow the missions, trying to calculate the orbit, trajectory, and pay very close attention, like what's going on different online forums.
As a kid, I actually spent 5 years learning how to walk again and how to reuse my motor skills, like learning to walk, learning to run, learning to jump. And in that time period, I became space obsessed, and they were photographing the planet in 3D. I thought that was really cool.
Project that tied me most to space was leading a student satellite project, which was my heart and soul. It is funny because I'm going to launch before the satellite. So I look forward to seeing it come after me, I guess.
Looking back historically at how we all came together, we had this polar connection. We all have a connection to an archipelago of islands that is set in the Arctic Ocean called Svalbard.
I spent quite some time on Svalbard, the northernmost city or town one can live in and work from. Every crew have a certain connection to Svalbard.
Janneke currently lives there, Chun has been there, Rabia and Chun have both joined me on expeditions there. So we kind of have this connective tissue, if you like. But it so happens that we're all bringing things into this mission that are critical. We will be doing something that is quintessential to humans and that is seeing things with our own eyes.
Yeah, the FRAM2 mission is like my baby. I planned and designed everything. I make a proposal. I think this is one of my life goals.
Now, the crew is so excited to go to space today. Now, currently at Complex 39A, it's T-minus 47 minutes and counting.
Control will abort the launch auto sequence and immediately proceed into launch abort. At T-minus 10 seconds, the launch control will be hands-off and relying on automated work criteria for the remainder of the count. Operators advise the launch director where the structural breakup or fire is imminent occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. Launch control. At this time, you may proceed with arming the crew arm for movement.
Proceeding on crew arm at this time.
Information that the arm
Dragon,
is returned.
SpaceX, you are go for Section 6, close visors, and arm launch escape system.
Dragon, copy.
And there's that call out that John just mentioned. Now visually you could see that they closed their visors and
SpaceX Dragon, visors closed, arming launch escape system.
As a reminder, right now we have the 4 crew inside Dragon. They're the only people inside. The blast area of the hazard corridor has been cleared. The
SpaceX copies. We're monitoring.
Monitoring indicates that the Dragon team here in mission control, they're looking at the telemetry, making sure that the escape system, all the valves open, everything works, and that we have armed the escape system correctly. As I mentioned, we've got the 4 crew in the capsule. Before the T-minus 1 hour point, the support team actually left the pad, so they're clear. So these are You may have noticed a moment ago when we had the view out over the ocean, some flashes of lightning.
Expect loud venting from the vehicle in 30 seconds.
Yeah, that announcement, loud venting to the crew, that's as we're getting the Falcon 9 ready to begin loading propellant into the tanks.
Yeah, and you're going to hear these kinds of call-outs. The crew is inside of Dragon, so they can't see what's happening outside of the vehicle, but they do hear a lot of sounds that are going on as the vehicle is preparing for liftoff. So the
Falcon 9 tanks are venting for the start of propellant load.
We're right on time, inside T-minus 37 minutes.
Yeah, so the Corps is announcing these events so that the crew is aware of what's going on with it.
Give them situational awareness, or SA as we call it. Now, right now, we're waiting for Falcon 9 propellant loading to start. That's our next major event in the countdown. We'll hear the call out on the countdown net that launch auto sequence has begun, and the crew will be informed of that by the launch director. So we'll begin with loading fuel onto both stages, both stage 1 and stage 2, as well as liquid oxygen onto the first stage. Now that second stage fuel loading finishes fairly rapidly. You know, the fuel tank on second stage is not as large compared to first stage. So we will actually finish that in several minutes, and then we will begin loading liquid oxygen onto the second stage. Now, as we wait for another minute for the start of propellant load, I was talking about the lightning we saw. We've had lightning in the area. We had a front just go through, and before we came onto the webcast, we were violating multiple rules. Lightning, anvil clouds, thick clouds, electric fields. All of those are slowly going away. The front is quickly moving to the east, but you're looking at lightning that is actually heading away from the launch pad. And the launch weather officer at Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral, is telling us that there's nothing behind this front, so fingers crossed, but we expect right now the weather will cooperate. But as a reminder, when we start loading propellant in 20 seconds, that's going to commit us to the T0, and that'll be our only chance for this evening.
Yeah, John, you mentioned all the weather scenarios that we have. The most important is what's happening at T0 and beyond. So it sounds like we are still go for launch, regardless of the current weather.
Propellant load has started.
And great call out there. Propellant loading has begun.
Right on time. So now the propellant load for Falcon 9 has started. That means the 8 Super Draco engines inside Dragon are ready to launch the capsule away from the Falcon 9 rocket in an instant, should there be any kind of emergency associated with the rocket or the pad.
And we're now at T-minus 34 minutes and 20 seconds. Tell us all about that. We'd like to welcome Marissa Rosenberg to the show. Marissa is a senior medical research engineer at SpaceX and is on the team here helping to bring all of this great research to space. Thank you so much for joining us, Marissa.
Thank you for having me.
Now, as with all of our private astronaut missions, there's generally a lot of science and research that is going to be conducted in space, and FRAM2 is no exception. I understand that we've got, I think, about 22 experiments that we're going to be conducting over the next 3 to 5 days in orbit. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the more involved or interesting ones?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first sat down with the FRAM crew and asked what kind of research they were excited about, they really emphasized exploration. And so we found a lot of things that are firsts and are also going to help us on our way to explore the universe. And so one I'm very excited about is the very first X-ray in space. And what I have here is a mini X-ray generator and a digital detector plate. And so the crew is going to use these to take X-rays of different parts of their body. Why do we care about X-rays in space? A few reasons. One, if we're going to be walking all around the surface of different planets, we might have an injury. And an X-ray machine is a standard in any emergency room. But another interesting use is that bones actually lose their calcium in space from not being in gravity. And this machine can also help us measure astronauts' bone density, so we can actually keep track of how they're doing in that respect. And finally, this can allow us actually to look into machines. So if we have a machine that's malfunctioning, instead of having to take it apart and figure out what's wrong, we can just take an X-ray of it to diagnose the problems.
Now, while the engineer in me is like, this X-ray device is really cool, I actually think it's really cool that we're kind of making life in space very similar to life on Earth. And you also have some other devices here with you that are doing the same thing.
Load has started.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'm very excited about is that we will also be doing the very first exercise in Dragon. Now, Dragon is a smaller volume, so we have to get kind of creative with exercise. And how we're going to do that is with blood flow restriction. So blood flow restriction is where we actually cut off some of the blood flow to, in this case, the legs. And we're doing this with two different devices. The first are these shorts here. They're Hydro shorts, and they use an elastic band with Velcro to reduce that blood flow. And the other are these Delphi cuffs that use an inflatable cuff to actually control that blood flow. And what this does is a force multiplier for exercise. So by reducing the blood flow, it tricks your muscles into thinking that you're working harder than you are. So you get a little bit more bang for your buck there.
I don't know, exercise. I want to talk about exercise. I actually want to go back to the x-ray device. When I go to the dentist and they do my dental x-rays, they put a big lead apron on me and everybody leaves the room. You can't leave the Dragon capsule. So what are you going to do when you take x-rays in Dragon?
Yeah, it's a really good question. You're right, you can't leave the capsule. So the most important thing that we do is consent the crew. So we really lay out exactly how much radiation we expect them to get from this device and what the risks are so that they can make an informed choice of the risks and the benefits. However, this device is FDA approved, and there's very little leakage of the X-ray outside of where you're pointing it. And it has these very cool, what are called collimator knobs, which control these lead plates that allow you to really narrow in the amount of X-rays that you're going to get. So you're really only getting X-rays in the area that you want to image.
Yeah, that's really cool that we have the X-ray device to focus on the health of the people. We have working out devices to help them stay healthy. Now, it seems like they're going to need some nutrition, some food. Can you tell us more about some science experiments on that?
Absolutely. I think food is one of the most challenging issues that we have to solve for long-term missions. And we are taking one step with FRAM2. They will be growing the first mushrooms in space. And they are going to be growing oyster mushrooms, a very delicious varietal that doubles in growth every day. So it is, considered a perfect space crop. So we'll see how they do in microgravity.
Okay. Now, I understand after we return to Earth, the crew's got one other medical experiment they're going to do, and that is something about unassisted leaving of the spacecraft. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we have to think about exploration. So right now, when Dragon splashes down, we have a whole recovery team and ships and fast boats, and it's very exciting. But when you land on the moon or Mars or any planetary surface, there's not going to be a recovery team there to greet you. So we really want to start understanding what crews are capable of right when they land. And the best way to start understanding that is on a relatively shorter duration mission where they are a little bit deconditioned from not being on Earth, but not as much as, say, a 6-month mission. So this is the safest environment that we can do this test. And we're going to have the crew hop out of their seats on their own, take their footrests off, go down, get their survival gear, get it out of the hatch, get themselves out of the hatch, and walk all the way to the medical bay without any assistance.
No one's going to help them with their luggage. Okay.
I see why they're going to be working out on orbit so that they can be prepared for when they come back.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Marissa, and sharing the information on these devices and research that they're going to be doing in space.
Absolutely. I can't wait to see the launch and all the great results.
Coming up.
In addition to the medical research, the crew will be operating an onboard amateur ham radio system, sending slow scan TV images as part of a high school and university age student competition, and they're calling it From to Ham.
Now, while it is a competition for students, you can still try your hand at receiving images and solving the puzzle if you're a ham radio operator and you have the right equipment. You can check out the technical specifications at FRAM2ham.com. Now, we had an opportunity to catch up with the crew to hear about several of the activities that they have planned for their time in space, including the FRAM2 ham. Let's check it out.
I'm an Australian polar adventurer, explorer. I've skied 4 new routes to the South Pole. These are expeditions that I've planned myself. I've looked at satellite imagery of these glaciers that have never been traversed before. And I'm going to have the opportunity as we fly over Antarctica and see those routes from above.
The primary goal of this mission is the observation, polar observation. There have been humans flying into space since 1961, and nobody's seen the South Pole, North Pole, extreme polar regions from orbit yet.
We will be doing something that is quintessential to humans, and that is seeing things with our own eyes.
It's my curiosity, like for years, what's Antarctica really like?
We don't know what we're going to discover. We are exploring a part of planet Earth from space that has never been explored. As a cinematographer, I'm excited about filming the aurora. That is a visual indicator for us to understand a lot about space weather. What does the aurora consist of? What's the density of aurora? And actually flying through the aurora, capturing this in both 2D and 3D.
What I'm looking forward to do in space, looking forward to the research that we are going to do on orbit. I would say we have two main themes. So one is how do people adapt to extreme environments? Based on that, how do you increase the access to space for anyone medically without being a superhuman as in the olden days? I think astronauts before us were absolute heroes, right? But then it should shift from that to how does anyone go into space? I'm super excited for a ham radio competition that we will host. The idea is that we have different pictures of locations on Earth in the polar regions, which are also of relevance to polar history. But then we cut them up, mix them up, and we're just going to send them down through the radio, and people have to puzzle them together in international teams. Another thing that we plan to do in space is that we're bringing a synthesizer, and we want to sample some sounds that we can hear in space, some of the thrusters firing, for example, and integrate that into one jam, I think, which would be pretty cool.
We know that photographs of the Arctic and Antarctica are available on Google Earth and through satellite imagery, but to see them from orbit may reveal things about these two areas, the Antarctic and the Arctic, that we have previously not known.
Some people may think it's a tourist mission. I don't mind that. It's up to you to define what's a tourist mission, but for me it's an exploration.
Dragon is the first private spacecraft to take humans to the International Space Station, and it's currently the only vehicle capable of returning significant amounts of cargo back down to Earth.
Now, the crew will spend all their time in the pressurized section, which is the top portion of the spacecraft. This area allows for the transport of people and environmentally sensitive cargo. Dragon's trunk, which sits below the pressurized section, can carry unpressurized cargo if needed, and it remains attached to Dragon until shortly before re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. Now, we mentioned earlier in the show that this will be the first West Coast recovery with crew. This change was made to allow for the trunk to remain attached to Dragon through the deorbit burn, and then it will ensure that it falls safely into the Pacific Ocean.
Like the Falcon 9 first stage, Dragon is also reusable. This will be the fourth flight for this Dragon named Resilience, which most recently supported the Polaris Dawn mission last year. And just like on Polaris Dawn, the FRAM2 crew will have access to high-speed internet in space via the Starlink network. Dragon is carrying what we call a plug-and-placer, a device that is linked to a Starlink terminal in Dragon's trunk, which is connected to a router, providing Wi-Fi for the crew. The placer is responsible for establishing and maintaining a laser communications link with Starlink satellites, which will be in orbit with Dragon. Using this hardware, Dragon will attempt to talk to Starlink the same way Starlink satellites talk between themselves, which is with lasers.
Now, over the last 5 years, and not including FRAM2, Dragon has supported 16 human spaceflight missions and flown 62 crew members representing 14 countries. Through the Axiom, Inspiration 4, Polaris Dawn, and FRAM2 missions, Dragon is helping lay the groundwork for deep space exploration, rapidly expanding our knowledge of how humans can adapt, live, and work in outer space.
Dragon has proven to be quite a versatile spacecraft. It can autonomously dock to the space station when outfitted with the ISS docking adapter, which you can see on your left hand of the screen. Dragon can also be configured with hardware to support a spacewalk, which made its debut on the Polaris Dawn mission last year, and you can see that on the right hand of your screen.
And in free flyer mode, in the center of the image, that's the docking adapter removed, swapped out for a cupola, and that's as it's configured for the FRAM2 mission. And right in front of us, this is actually a mock-up of the cupola right here. It's essentially a large dome-shaped window, providing incredible 360-degree views while in space. Hello, Sarah. Now, the cupola first debuted during the Inspiration 4 mission in 2021. Now, Dragon does have
Stage 2
other
RP1 load is
windows
complete.
on the sides of the spacecraft that the astronauts can use, but they're a lot smaller.
The cupola replaces the docking port or Skywalker hardware at the nose of the spacecraft, which is not needed since FRAM2 will not be docking with the space station or doing a spacewalk. And being surrounded by a glass dome is probably the closest feeling you can get to being out in space without going outside of the spacecraft. And FRAM2 will be the second crew to experience Dragon's cupola while in orbit. Here's a little bit more from the SpaceX team on developing the largest window in space.
When we started thinking about the cupola, it's more than just another window in space. It's an extension of the Dragon spacecraft. So when we got into concepting, it has to have the same feel and aura of the actual Dragon spacecraft.
You are go to open the forward hatch for cupola use, and please enjoy the best view off the planet.
When the forward hatch first opens, you can look up and you see immediately that there's a large window up there with the 4 Draco shields protecting the bubbles from the Draco pulses. If you look at the videos from Inspiration 4, you can see their jaws all drop just looking out the forward hatch, not even being in the cupola.
The most notable thing to me is that it looks so simple on the outside, but the deeper you go, the more you uncover more complexities within it. There's 3 different bubbles that make up the cupola. The exterior-most bubble is our thermal bubble, which is designed to protect from micrometeorite debris that we could experience on orbit. The center bubble is the pressure pane, which holds in all the pressure. And the innermost pane is our scratch pane, designed to protect from anything that the crew inside might be doing.
It's actually made from acrylic and polycarbonate layers, but you also have technologies that are in, say, fighter aircraft that are applied to the cupola. We have a coating called indium tenoxide, which keeps the temperatures down on the inside of the cupola space. All these aspects are tested on the ground and made sure that we operate safely and that we know that when the astronauts are going up there that they have a great time. What makes this the largest window in orbit? It's just the overall size of it.
I feel like it's just so immersive, like you're inside of the bubble and you're looking out and space is literally all around you. I think the experience of having the cupola on Dragon makes it such that Dragon is the experience. Even when we fly our short duration missions to the ISS feels like the destination and the experience, whereas having the cupola on Dragon really makes Dragon and being inside the cupola the destination.
When you get into the cupola, it feels almost like you're on a spacewalk. The Earth all around you, the stars, sunrise, sunset, getting up in there and looking out is a one-of-a-kind experience.
Now, joining us now are 2 SpaceX engineers who made their spaceflight debut on Polaris Dawn. They're going to help share what's going to space in a Dragon, what it's like. Welcome, Sarah Gillis and Anna Menon.
It's so great to be here with you. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you so much. We're thrilled to be here.
Anna, Sarah, we're super excited to have you with us today. And for those of you who are not familiar, Sarah and Anna spent nearly 5 days in orbit, along with their crewmates Jared Isaacman and Kid Petit. Polaris Dawn flew higher than any Dragon mission to date, reaching the highest Earth orbit ever flown.
And the crew completed the first ever commercial extravehicular activity with SpaceX-designed EVA spacesuits. So we're excited to have them with us today to add some insight from that firsthand experience.
At this point, propellant loading has begun on Falcon 9 as FRAM2 prepares for liftoff in about 16 minutes from now. I'm sure you both remember what that was like. What do you think the crew is doing right now, and what do you think is on their minds?
You know, prop load, when you actually get to commit to that, is a really big milestone in this. And so I'm sure the crew is all focused, really preparing for the operation ahead. As prop load starts, you start hearing the vehicle come alive. You have massive valves on Falcon that are opening as prop starts flowing into the tanks, and you can hear it. The whole thing shakes and moves. And in the capsule, you actually feel that. The whole rocket sways at times. So I'm sure they're going to be experiencing all of that and, really getting into the operational mindset before launch.
Yeah, that's so cool. John and I have been working on Falcon and the whole time we've been here, but you guys got to experience what Dragon feels like and sounds like. It's just really cool.
Incredible ride.
Yes.
Yeah, right now, you both are very familiar with Dragon, but not based on your spaceflight experience, but the roles that you had even before you flew in Dragon. What were those roles that you were involved in?
Absolutely. So I actually started as an intern at SpaceX a long time ago, working on the interior of the Dragon spacecraft, helping test the interfaces. That led to building the astronaut training program here, supporting Bob and Doug through preparing our first crew to go to space. And then that led to supporting the Inspiration 4 crew on the first all-civilian mission.
And I worked on the operations team, and one of my favorite parts of that job was working in mission control. So one of my roles there was as a mission director. And the mission director is the person that leads that team behind us in mission control. It's the team of engineers and experts in systems, and together that team helps fly the Dragon mission. They respond to anomalies real time if they occur, they help keep the astronauts healthy and safe, and they help ensure all of the mission objectives are accomplished successfully.
Now, the Dragon that's supporting today's FRAM2 mission, that's the same one that you all flew in on Polaris Dawn. So Jesse and I haven't been inside Dragon, we're Falcon. But what's it like living on orbit inside of a Dragon, or even going through the countdown right now?
Living in Dragon is absolutely incredible. It feels like a Dragon is alive around you. So you have the sound of fluids moving through the walls around you as you're living in there. You hear valves opening and closing, and periodically you hear the Dragon Draco thrusters firing as Dragon works to keep attitude control. And then also when we do burns, it's a whole melody. And so it feels like it's alive around you. But then on top of that, you are getting to float in this 3D environment. And that means that you get to really use all of the surfaces around you. You get to use the ceiling, the floor, the walls, and you get to really float around. But I think what's really exciting is that this FRAM2 crew gets even more space than we had. They have the cupola, so that expands their 3D environment and also provides them this really spectacular view of our planet. I cannot wait to see the imagery that they get to share with us through that view.
I like how you said the melody, and it's right at the shot of you with the violin. Cupola versus Skywalker, you know. Is there a Dragon you'd like to fly in?
Oh, man. You know, the spacewalk was extraordinary, so I'm really grateful we got to do that. But I think the views they're going to see through that cupola of the poles are going to be astonishing.
I'd say any Dragon is a good Dragon.
I agree. Any Dragon is a good Dragon. We are so excited to hear so much more about your guys' experience as we count down to FRAM2's launch today. So we're about T-minus 12 minutes from liftoff, and while the countdown continues, let's meet the launch vehicle taking FRAM2 to space today.
Take a quick look here in the last minutes, but Falcon 9 is the first orbital-class rocket capable of reflight. For this flight, it'll be the 6th time this first stage booster has supported a mission.
Additional medical and operational assistance. Exiting the spacecraft without help will become more important for missions to places like the Moon and Mars, where the crew may need to exit their landing vehicle unassisted.
Okay, we've just got a few seconds before we get into the next major event in the countdown, but we're going to put you on the spot. You're the only two of us that have been to space and have gone through the splashdown. What's it like trying to get out of the capsule? Do you want dolphins?
The dolphins were incredible. You know, it's very interesting readapting to gravity and taking those first steps. I think it's a great research experiment.
This is seat 1. How many times have you been to the South Pole before?
To the South Pole, around 10 or 12 times, but to both poles combined, around 30.
How long did you take to ski there?
My last expedition in Antarctica, I skied a new route
they're talking to the crew about their
fourth place here and across the plateau to the South Pole. This expedition was almost 900 kilometers, and it took me 50 days to complete.
Can you believe that in just 42 minutes we'll fly from here in Florida to the South Pole?
Unbelievable.
Sounds like they're talking to Eric Phillips about his experience in the Arctic. And yeah, he's going to go from pole to pole in 46 minutes in one of these orbits this time around. Okay, T-minus 5 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. As we were just mentioning, we're coming up on the announcement to Dragon to configure for terminal count. We'll also be going to internal power on the Dragon spacecraft. So we're going to listen to the call out from the Dragon team and the core as we get through this next milestone in the countdown.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressing for strong back retract.
Dragon is in configure for terminal count.
Great news. The strong back that you heard called out there is the transporter erector, which you can see on your screen just to the right of the vehicle. Now, what's going to happen is the clamp arms are going to open up first, and then the strong back, where the TE is going to begin to retract away from the vehicle, just about 2 degrees. And you can see it's very slow on your screen.
The strong back is retracting.
Good call out there, but you can see on your screen the clamp arms are beginning to open up. Again, once those are fully open, that makes way for the TE to move away from the vehicle.
Yeah, and we heard the call out, we're pressurizing for strong back retract. We increased pressure into the Falcon 9 tanks, essentially stiffening the rocket so that we are then ready to open the arms up, release the load. Falcon 9 right now is standing free, except it's held down by arms at the very bottom of the Falcon 9. But you can see the arms around the second stage, which is just below the Dragon trunk, are opening. And now the strong back itself, the structure alongside the Falcon 9, will move about 2 degrees away from the Falcon 9. And then at liftoff, hydraulic arms will pull it to a position 45 degrees away as the Falcon 9 lifts off from pad 39A. Now, next activity we ought to hear is the strong back retract is complete. We might hear that call out, we might not. And then we're also finishing up liquid oxygen loading on the first and second stages.
Yeah, at this point, fuel is loaded on both the first stage and the second stage. As John mentioned, liquid oxygen loading on stage 1 should complete in about 10 seconds or so. And then second stage liquid oxygen loading should complete at T-minus 2 minutes.
Just waiting to hear the call outs right now for stage 1 LOX load.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
All right, we've got a good LOX load on first
Dragon is in
stage.
terminal count and is on internal power.
And we've got the confirmation Dragon has gone internal power, coming down from the crew back to the Dragon team here in the Mission Control Center. Next major activity, T-minus 2 minutes. Stage 2 LOX load will complete, and that'll finish loading all propellants on the Falcon 9 first and second stages.
We do have a crowd building up here in front of Mission Control.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
All right,
Great
right on
news.
time.
Yeah. It's getting pretty exciting here as we get just under a couple minutes away from liftoff. Now that propellant loading is complete, that means that
Dragon is in auto idle.
1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen are now loaded on the Falcon 9 vehicle. And we will begin some venting. This will be some venting of the...
Ground gas closeouts have started. Expect loud venting.
Perfect timing. That venting is going, you may see some white clouds around the vehicle. We are venting out the liquid oxygen line, and that colder air meeting the warmer ambient air in Florida is creating that condensation. And I like to describe that like the condensation building around a cold glass of water. Now we're coming up on a minute where Falcon will go into startup. This is where the internal flight computers will take over.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And now the vehicle...
Dragon is in countdown.
Vehicle is in startup. We're now just waiting for the final call from the launch director.
SpaceX. Go for launch.
And great news, we are go for launch.
SpaceX Dragon, FRAM2, go for launch.
And heard one call from the crew. One last call from the FRAM2 crew. Let's watch as the Falcon 9 vehicle takes Dragon and FRAM2 into space.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. Copy, 1 Alpha. Vehicle is pitching downrange. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
T plus 35 seconds into the FRAM2 mission, the first ever human spaceflight mission to cover the poles.
And we are throttling down the engines on the first
Power
stage.
telemetry nominal.
On the first stage vehicle for.
Stage 1, throttle down.
Oh, it's perfect timing with these callouts. We throttled down the engines for max Q, and there's max Q. It's the maximum dynamic pressure that the vehicle sees on ascent.
Confirmation we're supersonic. We're preparing to throttle back up on first stage Merlin engines.
Stage 1, throttle up.
Confirmation we're back up on power on the 9 Merlin 1D engines.
Stage 1, Bravo.
1 Bravo
Copy,
called out
1
by
Bravo.
the crew. That means if there was a need for an abort with the first stage now emptying itself of propellant, Dragon would fly a different profile than if, say, right off the pad we had initiated. Waiting for the MVAC-D chill call.
MVAC chill is underway.
We're beginning to chill the second stage engine in preparation for its ignition, coming up in less than a minute from now.
We also have a few events that are going to happen back to back. We'll have MECO stage separation and second stage engine ignition. MECO is main engine cutoff. That's where we will shut down all of those 9 engines, which you're seeing there on the first stage vehicle to slow
Stage 1, throttle down.
And we've got a live view of the crew on the vehicle at this moment, which is really cool. And we will have MECO stage separation and MVAC ignition in just about 10 seconds from now.
We're beginning to throttle down the Merlin engines in preparation for main engine cutoff. You on the left looking up at the second stage engine nozzle.
MECO. Stage separation confirmed.
Stage 2.
Copy, stage 2. MVAC ignition.
And there we just saw MECO stage separation. The MVAC engine has ignited, and we've also started the boost back burn on the first stage, which you can see there on your left-hand screen. Anna and Sarah, those were a lot of dynamic events that just happened right now that the FRAM2 crew is experiencing, but you guys also got to experience that.
Yes, I remember. Now we're in stage 2, and I remember that slow buildup of G-forces during this stage. The first stage, the G-forces come on fast, but the second stage, they're a bit slower. And so right now, you're starting to feel it come on faster and faster, and you feel that pressure into your chest. You feel yourself being pressed into your seat, harder to move your hands up. It's an exciting ride, and you see the minutes counting by until the moment that you know you'll be in space.
Yeah, you're right, because
Dragon SpaceX trajectory nominal.
good call out from Guidance Navigation Control Officer. Trajectory is nominal for the crew.
Dragon, copy.
And Commander copies that call out. But yeah, you had a good point. Well, we talked earlier, the second stage engine's over 200,000 pounds of thrust. There's more than 200,000 pounds of propellant, so when it first lights, it's not accelerating very rapidly. But Sarah, what's it like when you get near the end of the burn? We heard Bob and Doug back on Crew Demo 2 call it like driving down a gravelly, bumpy road at high speed.
It's definitely more, maybe a little more vibration than first stage because the engine is so much closer to the spacecraft. So you absolutely feel a difference in the sensations you experience when you're riding on the second stage.
Cool.
I'm sure the FRAM2 crew is feeling something similar. They're still inside of Dragon, which is still attached to the second stage, and on your left-hand screen,
SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
on the left hand of your screen, you can see a view of the MVAC engine ignited. But coming up in a couple of minutes, we'll have the entry burn on the first stage, which is currently making its way back down to Earth. And we did perform a boost back burn on this one.
Yeah, we did a one-engine boost back burn. We didn't have, normally when you launch to the east or northeast in a crew mission, you take advantage of the Earth's rotational velocity. But in this case, we're pretty much going straight south, and so you don't get that eastward velocity. So the first stage needed to use a little more propellant to get the crew up into the right position for stage separation. So we can't bring the first stage all the way back to land like we might do on an ISS mission. So instead, we're going to land on the drone ship, but not as far south as we would normally do
Dragon,
if this
SpaceX,
was
trajectory nominal.
something like a Starlink mission. Another nominal trajectory.
Dragon copy, nominal.
And the crew recites it back. We've got good comms with the crew. But yeah, Jesse, to your point, we are coming up on the second part of the return of the first stage, and that's going to be the entry burn. First stage will start the center engine and then light 2 additional engines. We should see that coming up right now in about 7 seconds. Meanwhile, the crew continuing to head to space.
During this time, we would continue to monitor the altitude as the vehicle kept rising and rising.
Yeah, you got the displays there where you guys can monitor that during the launch.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
And we did see on the left-hand screen that the entry burn has begun.
Copy, nominal.
Entry burn did complete. We didn't hear any callouts, but we do have a green screen here. We have a good entry burn. Second stage continuing to head towards the separation orbit. First stage heading to the drone ship.
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
We are expecting the landing burn on the first stage to occur in about 20 seconds from now. That'll just be a single engine burn on the vehicle. Once again, the M1D engines have about 190,000 pounds of thrust, which is just enough to slow the vehicle down just in time for landing.
Panama.
Copy, Panama.
It's another abort call out on the second stage. You're going to the space station, you hear it called Shannon. That tells you where you can reach if there's a problem right now. And we've now got video on first stage. Landing burn has begun. And a view from the drone ship. Legs are deployed. And touchdown after 6 flights.
And the booster that has taken the FRAM2 crew out into space has now made it back to Earth.
Yeah, Jesse, we just heard the call out. I don't know if you hear it in the capsule on your flight, but we heard the terminal guidance call. We've essentially reached the altitude. Now we're working the angular momentum of the orbit. So we're going to listen in. We're just seconds away from shutdown. And about less than a minute after that, we should have Dragon separation from the second stage.
MVAC shut down.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
And great news there. We heard the call out for nominal orbital
Dragon
insertion.
copy. Nominal.
Dragon copies nominal.
Launch escape system disarmed.
Oh, another good call out. They're in orbit where they want to be. They've disarmed launch escape system. Doesn't need it anymore. We're 191 kilometers up. We've got the view of the crew. Right now, Dragon, or the second stage, is going through a very short period. We're making sure that we're pointed in the right direction. We've got the engine shut down, purging gas, and it's separation.
FRAM2 crew is flying on its own on Dragon.
Dragon, on behalf of the Falcon team, we're honored to deliver you safely to your polar orbit. Enjoy the views of the poles, send us some pictures, and our hearts and minds will be flying with you as you go over the poles. Have a great flight.
And Dragon, this is your launch director here. Pretty wild to see the FRAM adventure sailing to the poles once again, over 130 years from its christening. This time, though, with Starlink. Godspeed, FRAM2. Cheers.
Cheers.
SpaceX team calling up to Dragon. What you're seeing right now, the shots of Dragon, that was the Draco thruster checkout. And there's the crew. And I think Jesse and Sarah on the right next to one of the small crew windows, that's probably their zero-G indicator, as we call it.
Yeah,
I can't quite make it out.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts.
Dragon copy. Nominal.
And as we don't have views, what you're seeing there on your screen is mission control here in Hawthorne. Again, the crowd that we had watching the FRAM2 crew launch into space. We also saw the zero-G indicator. Hopefully we'll get another live view where we can see what the zero-G indicator was. You guys had a zero-G indicator on your mission, so you know, and I'm probably very connected with the tradition of being able to pick out and unlock new possibilities. Throughout the 3 to 5 day mission, the crew plans to conduct 22 research projects to help advance humanity's capabilities for long-duration space exploration and understanding human health in space. And we really want to thank both of you, Anna and Sarah, for joining us today, sharing your insights, sharing all of your experience, especially throughout the dynamic events happening with the FRAM2 crew.
Thank you so much for having us, and Godspeed, FRAM2.
Yeah, thank you so much. Godspeed, FRAM2. Godspeed, Dragon Resilience.
And thanks to both of you also. Now, of course, we'll be back to bring you the live coverage of Splashdown when the crew returns to Earth. Now, you can stay on top of updates from the crew by following us on X at SpaceX. We can also keep tabs on the mission with the Dragon Tracker on SpaceX.com. There's a view of the Dragon Tracker right now. You can see follows Dragon. So go to the webpage, SpaceX.com. You get an idea where Dragon is, and you notice right there, we are heading south to the South Pole right now, right on trajectory. So I also want to thank the Range and the FAA for supporting today's mission. And thank you all for watching and logging on. And we'll see you next time.
Dark we rise and soar, Guided by the dreams we wore, from the oceans to the skies, endless fire burns in our eyes. Beyond the stars we chase the light, with fearless hearts through endless nights. No frontier can hold us down, the universe is our playground. Mountains high and oceans deep, secrets in the void we keep. Every step a tale to weave, for those who dare, who still believe. Beyond the stars we chase the light, with fearless hearts through endless nights. No frontier can hold us down, the universe is our playground. Is our playground. Mountains high and oceans deep, secrets in the void we keep. Every step a tale to weave, for those who dare, who still believe. Beyond the stars we chase the light, with fearless hearts through endless night. No frontier can hold us down, the universe is our playground. Echoes call from far away, guiding ships through cosmic sway. With every launch a new sunrise, the quest for knowledge never dies. Beyond the stars we claim the skies, bound by hope that never dies. To worlds unknown we'll make our mark, lighting flames within the dark.
Three, two, one.